etc. However, it's being dismantled. So if you see, and as you see the institutions, particularly operating at North America and being reflected around the world, because they're seated all around the world, being dismantled, don't cry. Use your intelligent mind and come together. Start loving one another, help one another, understand those dismantlements are purposeful for the ultimate good and liberation of humanity. Any questions, Dr. Nari?
Yeah, I'm trying to go through it. There was someone who mentioned, where makes this, that the Vietnam War was, let's see that. Vietnam War was started to get rid of the Buddhists. It didn't work. That when the Vietnamese saw the melanated soldiers, they thought that they were the gods that returned to help them.
Well, that's why a lot of them have helped. For those of you whose parents, uncles, and others who have had some experience with people from that era of time, may have delivered this message to you, coming from some of the brothers in Vietnam and Cambodia, etc. Brother, what are you doing here? How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's true. Because these people don't know. They think that because these different tribes of Naga around the world think that they're not their own family. You can take many of these Asiatics from around the world and put them in our communities and dress them just like we dress according to the fads, and you wouldn't know too much the difference. Not really. You'd be surprised how much we're like.
I saw something with them singing, and if you didn't see who was singing, it was gospel, but you would have thought it was a
Yes.
Pentecostal church here, and they were Asian, what we would call Asians. Here's a question: how do we, from Pink Illuminance, All Rights Reserved, how do we actively enforce Aboriginal title and unity by territorial positions? Moors, indigenous people of Canaan land, have not been fully successful against the British Crown, according to my knowledge.
Oh, well, true. Well, you see what's happening across the planet now, and the dismantlement of a lot of the institutions under the Black Codes, because remember, Black Codes are a psychic attack constructed by hybrid Europeans. So as the people are becoming cognate and active in Canaan land and elsewhere, and you see the disruption of the institutions of both Westminster, Washington, D.C., and the popes of Rome, you see it taking place there. This is part of the dismantlement. Because keep in mind, don't look at the people as being unsuccessful. Look at the fact that Rome hasn't fallen totally yet. As Rome falls, you know, the real deal, why are you doing what you're doing? Why is the cognates being promoted? So that you, me, we can be more competent to take care of our affairs. You know, and I know already, in the state of mind that our people are in those Black Codes, that they not only would not properly administer their political jurisdictions, they will corrupt them and give them back to the hybrids. Is it not reflected in the fact that you've seen many of the Asiatics of North America in different walks of life acquire fiat to the levels that they could do a lot to help our people, but you see that when they usually step in that direction, if they're not overthrown by the hybrid Europeans via the IRS or some other one of their three-letter social engineering operations, you will see them usually get socially destroyed, or they're not in the state of mind proper to even build something to help themselves and their own people. And so they usually buy a bunch of expensive jewelry, making some hybrid rich with diamonds that are stolen from other parts of Africa. And they usually, like if you give them a 35-inch wheel to put on their car that costs $80,000, that's what they'll spend it on. So is such a person in that state of mind prepared to run government? Answer the question yourself. However, as people are becoming cognate and more realistic from among them, and it probably become more from the youth who are less contaminated, the truth will come from the mouth of babes. They will come with a cognizance given to them, bliss upon them by their mothers, and who will bring those champions here who will be qualified to fix all this mess. They're being born. They're not made, they're being born. Because keep in mind, particularly as our women become more cognate, able to forgive, willing to forgive themselves, proper use of the womb, almost everything we need they'll bring here anyway. Because the capacity is already in your light, in your DNA. We just need some clean-minded women or stargates to do their work without all the BS that we've been subjected to, including the Christian black codes that have been governing our families and tearing us apart. And we've been mad at each other, not knowing that the puppeteer has been operating this game on us. And we've fallen for it. We've agreed to these fake jurisdictions.
Speaking of the Christian black codes, what you're talking about, why is it that most Christians, including me when I was
people that claim to be Christians,
including myself, I'm gonna put myself in there, who was when I was, claiming Christianity and embracing that, why didn't we know that these codes existed? Do you think that knowledge of these codes would have had less and less or fewer of us calling ourselves Christians?
Kind of like, it's not that it's unknown because they're predominant in all the states.
But they're not. This is not.
They're not promoted educationally.
Right.
They're enforced in the corporate venues, like in the municipalities. When you read the Christian black codes, you will see actually the origin of the municipal codes in the different cities, how they target our people. You'll understand it because it's right there.
These have never been.
They've never
removed.
been changed.
Never been changed.
They've never been changed. Our people have been trained to call it racism and prejudice, but they've never been pointed. No, it's not racism. Why don't you read the Christian black codes that operate in all these corporate municipalities, that all these council people in secret study? Why? You ever wonder why all the council people and all the mayors and all the governors and all these senators and congressmen just happen to be Freemasons, just happen to be daughters of ISIS, just happen to be Eastern Stars, just happen to be daughters of the American Revolution, just happen to be Odd Fellows, just happen to be Knights of Columbus? Come on. It's not that it's not there, Dr. Nail, it's that our people see these things and they don't pay attention to them because they're not them. Reverend Jones didn't say it, and he's a Mason. 99% of them. And they condemn it across the rostrum so that people don't look at it. They look at it, what is them imitating Egyptian or Hikuta culture. It's just that they're dark side. Not all and every one of them, but for the most part, because they're used for conquest. It's so like this. Instead of using water to cultivate a plant, they'd rather use the water to drown a baby and then drink its blood. So people get mad at the water. This is how they use masonry. So when people look at masonry as an example, they don't look at masonry as astrology, which is the culture, because they don't know that masonry is astrology. You see the point? So they condemn masonry. Oh, it's the devil. No, those ones that are using it as devils.
So they have their own form of masonry,
Yes.
which is dark.
Yes. Everything, a coin. If you have a coin, does it have a front? It has a front, physics. Have a front, does it have a back?
Yes.
That's fundamental physics, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not quantum, but it's fundamental physics, third dimension, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're talking about aggregate operations of law on the firmament of Earth. So the firmament of Midgard deals with land, air, and water. So land, air, and water makes law, doesn't it?
Yes.
So the rules of law are based on the rules of nature. If one is not harmed with the rules of nature, one gets out of the knowledge of law, don't they? So those who've been governing you have misused that position and then don't teach you. And then when you go in those directions, they say, oh, it's the boogeyman, don't look at that. And isn't this how our people, for the most part, look at masonry? Don't most people condemn masonry and don't even know what it is?
Yeah.
People don't not know that masonry means mother and son? From a metaphorical image, you would look at the image of Isis, Ayana, which is also Isis, Sheba, which is also Isis, Ishtar, also Isis, and Horus on her lap. And then for those who have imitated Christianity, you'll see the image of Mary and Jesus on her lap, which is Isis and Horus. That's what all it is. That's mother and son study. That's masonry. And the culture of us. Here is on Midgard. Who's on Midgard? Mother and son. Does the son of mother have a navel or a belly button? Yes. Does a man have a belly button? Yes. Then he's a mother's son. So we are born Masons. Do you understand that? Our people really, it's uncomfortable because so much has been contaminated. And I don't reject our people being what you call tentative about these things. It's just that they don't have the knowledge. But I do condemn the priesthood on all levels for not telling the truth because, like you were saying earlier, Dr. Naila, because if these things were known, the institutions would collapse because most of them are fake. Most of them are fraud. Most of them are projections of the truth watered down. Because if the priesthood told the truth, almost all institutions on the planet that's made in the third dimensional level of Pisces would collapse overnight. There would be an apostasy that the world has never known, which of course is taking place now anyway. So they can't stop it anyway. Thank you very much. However, this is the point. Like many times, Doc, as we've talked on different levels about, social engineering and the problems of humanity and how people will make statements about the Bible and then pretend they never heard about the Septuaginta. Mm-hmm. How people will talk about the Sabbath and then act like they don't know anything about the Sabian Moors from which the Sabbath comes from. But everybody in the name of religion talking about the Sabbath. It's sort of like a carpenter trying to argue with you that he doesn't know what a saw is or hammer. Now, if the man says that he's a carpenter and you're going to sit up there and argue with him and let him get this off on you that he don't know about a hammer and a saw, he's a liar and you're a dummy. You get the point? Because it goes together. So when you're talking about social engineering, they'll talk about ancient Egypt, ancient Yucatan, ancient America, and everything, and then act like they don't know recent history that took place in the last 200 years. But they're going to tell you about ancient history. Is that not a contradiction? So how can people know or make reference to the colonization of North America by hybrid Europeans and then act like they're not familiar with the Christian black codes, which is commonly known around the world as operative social engineering at North America? Not just that, how our people are always making race arguments about race and then don't know anything about Carlos Linnaeus or Frederick Johann Blumenbach, from which that whole paradigm was adopted in the modern world. In the modern world, not in the ancient world. Had nothing to do with ancient world. We're talking about contemporary times. You know, put it this way. It's like someone claiming to be a scholar and then don't know what etymology is. It's like somebody talking about, you know, like somebody always talking about the Bible, and you know, this is the word of God and stuff, and this is God's own sandwiches, and then this is the word. We're going around the world to teach the word, and etymology is the science of words. Like duh, and then they pretend they don't know what etymology is, and why our children can't read. Because they have denied our children basic third grade etymon degrees, which they need in order to read. You know, these frauds that we've been calling leaders, politicians, and priests, well, they can get that off on some of these people talking about they don't know. They knew, they chose. Point of it is they can fool the people like they've been fooling them most of the time. But in the age of Aquarius light, and with the electricity of Uranus hitting them on all fronts, and Saturn energy cashing all their checks, we don't have to prove anything to them. Let them experience it, because they ain't getting it off no more. It's being dismantled. Yeah, they know. Stop making excuses for them. That's part of the reasons why this BS has survived, because they have no jurisdiction except what we keep giving them and making excuses for them. If you want to debate about some little 2-year-old that keep talking about the Bible, the Quran, and all the holy books and holy roly prayer, and the little baby, because they're limited in their new bodies, old spirits but new bodies, not being able to exactly communicate because veils pull over them, you know. Although some of them connect. Some of them, and then, you know, they're trying to figure out how to talk to you. Well, some grown man or woman that's been taking people's finances and stealing the widow's pennies, talking about Jesus, God, Moses, Allah, Muhammad, and getting over on these poor people for decades and pretending they don't know the origins of all of those sects. You make excuses for them, I don't. They know damn well what they're doing and what they have done to this planet. We don't have to make any excuses anymore because they're being cleaned up. Let them fight Mother Nature, because she ain't playing. You can call her Allah, because Allah is a feminine name too, and a lot of people got that twisted too. Mom's cleaning up the house, get over it. And those who think they ain't going to get spanked, keep on trying her. But she ain't playing no more. Hopefully, and I don't have to hope because it's on the plate already. Women are becoming cognate, and those who recognize their Stargate capacities are bringing champions in, so we don't have to argue it no more. You know how people say, well, I'm not into that, and I don't believe those sandwiches that you talking about. I don't care. I ain't trying to prove nothing to them. Sit back and experience it, because you getting it. All of us are getting it. You will either clean up willingly or you will be cleaned out, whether you will to be or not. Thank you very much. So, and let's add to this. You know how like a lot of exercises we've been doing for the last 25, 30 years, talking about in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, the different levels of jurisdiction, the cognates of writs, averments of jurisdiction, quo warrantos, mandamuses, etc. Those were exercises to get you working again in your mind. But understand, even those platforms, as we move along, aren't even going to be used anymore. They're just for your mental exercise. Those platforms of government structure that you've been used to, done, Kaputsky, It's not only be governed, it's going to be governed by councils. Just like modulus. Modulus is pretty much in the nature of what will be in the future on another level, more galactic level. But same principles. But what you've been, people getting together. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to make them honor the treaties and stuff. We're just doing this for a mental exercise to get you straight. All those platforms is done. Done. But you need the exercise. That's why we've been telling you for years. Some of the things we're doing today is for your exercise because you need to be thinking. You need to comprehend what should have been. But since they didn't do it, all these things were breached. But they only played their role for that third dimensional operation. They're not necessary anymore. Take that. Oh, and they're being enforced too, on another level. So people, whether they will, I don't feel like it, I feel as though, play the games all you want to. I don't care what Todd you guys says. I ain't trying to prove anything I'm saying. All I'm saying is, for those of you who've been listening to me for years, what I told you 15 years ago, you're living today. And I ain't trying to prove anything. I'm going to sit back, drink some juice, eat a peanut butter sandwich, and watch the dynamics take place. Told you get an umbrella. Didn't need it. Fine. The rain is here. Big deal. It's for washing now, that's all. Any other questions?
Comments. Okay. With the fall from Sega Sage, with the fall of this Constantinian order, what will happen to corporations such as China and Russia that are competing with the United States corporation?
Let's put it this way. Let's look at the dynamics of the politics. Is the United States itself legitimate for anyone to be arguing for or pro or con?
Yeah.
So, do you think that the Manchurians, and we're not talking about corporate China, which isn't Chinese, that must be understood too. You think they forgot the Opium Wars that murdered many of their people and destroyed much of the culture? Huh? Whose side you on? That's one way to look at it. Now, if you're talking about legitimate government operations of states united under treaty that were overthrown 1861, now if you're talking about the restoration of that political platform of honor for hybrid Europeans doing treaty with the Moors, I'm in support of that all day long, of the Republic. Distinguished from the Republican Party, distinguished from the Democratic Demon Party, which are both frauds, neither of which honor the treaties or the Constitution. Oh, what? They're competing with the Manchurians? I think it was some of their praetors who moved some of the industry over in China after they took over some areas of China, and they're in fact not Chinese at all, but they've been controlling part of China's economy. They're actually some hybrids. So who are you talking about? And it's sort of like this. We're dealing, again, the dynamics of people being confused that the United States is not a country. And they keep talking about the United States as if it's a country. Competing with who? It seems to me that when the hybrid Europeans were murdering a lot of the Seminole and Illy's Moors in the land of flowers, and the Wachita, the Dugdamunya tribes, etc., and the Anyanwea, it was some Russians that came to help and stopped a lot of that stuff. So why we made it Russians? That's just a question. And also, And a couple of wars that took place and that were being perpetrated by people de facto who were operating from North America, operating in Iberia, Europe, Germany, etc. It was some Russians that stopped a lot of crap from happening here. Why don't they tell you about that? So my question to all of us is, before we start taking sides about anyone, we need to start figuring out who's really who's been projecting. Mustn't we? Mustn't we? Mustn't we? Because the United States is not a country. It's a private corporation owned by the popes of Rome, who have been the source of problems on the planet. Let's remind ourselves of some things. Let's remind ourselves about the U.S. jurisdiction. Take note, you all. Now, most of you are scholars who come here at the official House of Reawakening Minds, so most of you already know this stuff. And like, I could talk to Dr. G as we're talking today. A lot of times, it gets boring hearing ourselves talk because we've been telling this stuff for years and years and years. It just has become common knowledge now with many people in what they're calling the conscious community, which is also a misused statement. However, we've been telling people this for 25, 30 years. So the original organic and de jure constitutional United States Republic operating at North America and its established Republican form of government set forth at Article 4, Section 4 of that Constitution was secretly and covertly overthrown and converted into a foreign, privately owned, and for-profit corporation in the year 1871. For those of you who don't know, look and research the Act of Congress, 1871, and they will often list it in diplomatic relations, etc., as the Organic Act of Congress, 1871. And that misprision, deprived, and foreign feudal law entity was styled as the United States Corporation Company. It's not the country, it's a private corporation, a conglomerate of Roman Curia member corporations controlled politically on the legal or what you would call jurisdictional side by the barristers of England from the British Accredited Registry known as the Bar Association, who create all their forms, fixed forms, known as IRS forms, etc., in homage to the fake, artificial, perpetrating, imitation Queen of England, answering to the Pope of Rome and the bishoprics of Rome. That corporation and all corporate entities are governed by them and the Roman Curia. That's why every time you use one of their forms, it's already colored and you always lose. They're organized criminals. Get over it. Now, so that misprision derived in foreign feudal law entity was styled as United States Corporation Company. Many of you will recall about maybe 10 years ago or more, I shared with you all copies of the United States Corporation Company's Corporation Papers of 1925 and information on their bankruptcy then again, which then you understand what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did with the birth certificates to rebond them because no one was buying the marriage certificates anymore. And everybody's now talking about the birth certificates. Who's talking about those marriage certificates that funded this whole fraud operation? It's the divinity of the Jesusness of the Lord in the rice in your eye. That's why he threw rice in your eye. So you pay attention to that priest was a damn demon behind the pulpit. Let me tell you something about these demons. Game up. Anyway, so the privately owned and foreign entity was created by acts of misprision and sedition. And all its corporate franchisees, that means all the corporate municipalities and the corporate counties, and all the corporate states of entity operations are member body politics of the Roman Curia, and none of them are legitimate. Not a one. And this politically and socially subdued truth is actually the source of the functioning jurisdictional powers that gives the Pope of Rome and of the Vatican bishopric the valid and affirmable authority as expressed and executed via all issues of de facto color of law legislation that they've been operating and putting on the planet since 1871. So, the United States is the private corporation belonging to the Popes of Rome, operated and regulated through the bar members that you know as the Bar Association, which in the Bible will be called Pharisees and Sadducees. You call them now lawyers and attorneys. Did you not know that they was the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Duh. All the paperwork that they be sending you, the marriage certificates and the birth certificates and all of this stuff comes from them. This is why they always come into all of your estates after they signify, get men and women battling each other. Soon as they get married with that private contract, which they're treated as ships in the night, and the corporate state comes in and rapes them. And they've been doing it for quite some time. They got not a damn thing to do with anything divine. It's a spell cast for human trafficking. All marriage certificates sold by the corporate states are cast spells of the priesthood regulated by the Roman members of the Roman Curia, registered and regulated from Fleet Street, England. They ran out of them. Now they got the birth certificates. It ain't nothing new. It's just that some of the people starting to think and found out about, the birth certificates are really bank bonds. Notice the number over here and stuff, and notice the Cusick number on them.